Alright, let's do this. I'm going to explain the entire scope of the MCU in under 10 minutes. There are 23 movies right now, and right now is a perfect time to recap them all in order before Disney Plus comes in hot. This video took a while to make, so please give it a like. It helps out a lot. Let's get started. We start off with Captain America the First Avenger, aka the boring Captain America, set in World War II. This is where scrawny ass Steve Rogers joins the military and gets chosen to be in a super soldier program, and he becomes the world's first superhero. He gets ripped. Honestly, I wish it was that easy, because right before I recorded this, I had some pizza. Yes, I'm salty. Yes, I'm fat. Anyways, he then loses his best friend Bucky as he's fighting the man who has literally the worst skin ever, Red Skull, and then he goes into the ice, misses his date, and wakes up in present time. Then we have Captain Marvel, set in the 90s. Carol Danvers is a pilot and gets her powers by the Kree and is trying to find aliens who can transform into anyone, the Skrulls. This movie was pretty okay. It wasn't the best, wasn't bad, it was just alright. This movie did a great job at setting up future events with the Skrulls and possibly doing the invasion storyline, one of my favorite storylines. But back to Captain Marvel. The 90s are back. This movie has young Sam Jackson and Blockbuster. You can't really go wrong with either one of those two things. Moving on to the first Iron Man. One of my favorite movies ever. The first Iron Man is so damn good, it's stupid. We have Tony Stark, genius playboy philanthropist, who gets kidnapped by the 10 Rings, which is pretty cool because now they're doing Shang-Chi and they're doing the 10 Rings, so that's dope. And he's in the cave and he builds an Iron Man suit from a box of scraps to escape and get home. After that, he wrecks part of his home, cars, as he's perfecting the Iron Man suit. He later fights his dad's friend and colleague Obadiah, who initially called the hit on him, and they duke it out and Tony wins. He later then has a press conference and says the famous words. Such a good movie. It still holds up after all these years. It's my favorite, it's my dad's favorite. Such a good start to the MCU. Iron Man 2. Not the best movie, but a fun one. Tony Stark fights a man with deadly jumper cables. That's about it. Yeah, other stuff happens. The Avenger Initiative comes up. Rhodey gets his suit and the Stark Expo. Ooh, apparently we also see young Peter Parker, young Tom Holland, who was the kid that Tony saved. But to be honest, nothing else really important happened. Then we have illusionist Edward Norton coming in as Bruce Banner, transforming into the Hulk as he fights another soldier who created his own formula for the Hulk, and they fight in New York, and Edward Norton loses because he then gets replaced with Mark Ruffalo. Now we have Thor. Boring Thor, if you ask me. Thor 1 was pretty good, but still boring compared to Ragnarok. Thor's hammer comes to Earth, New Mexico to be exact, because Odin took away his ability to wield the hammer, and Thor is basically human now. I wonder if everyone in Asgard is ripped like that, because Jesus Christ, it looks like a freaking dream to live there. You got powers, you're ripped. Yes, I'm jealous, but Thor meets Jane Foster, falls in love, and then later gets his hammer back. Thor is just a love story between him and his hammer. Now, after all these movies, a couple movies setting up so much, we have The Avengers, the pinnacle of 2012 superhero movies. The Avengers is pretty freaking great. It's the first time we saw all these heroes together. I was going freaking crazy when I saw it because I was such a nerd growing up. I still am, and seeing the movie was wild. And we introduced Thanos, but we will talk about him a little bit later. The Avengers team up and fight the Chitauri that were sent from Thanos, and well, that's kind of it. Simple movie premise, but it was a good ass movie. It's still one of the best, one of the highest grossing movies to date, but still one of the best for sure, for sure. I freaking love it. Iron Man 3. To be honest, I don't really remember this movie. I just remember that it wasn't great. They fought the Mandarin, but it wasn't the Mandarin. But they fought some guy that worked with Pepper. Honestly, I don't really know what happened in this movie, and I know I'm supposed to be like a good YouTuber and stuff, but I didn't bother looking it up. I just know that it wasn't memorable. Let's move on. Another not great one. Thor: The Dark World. I'm gonna leave it at that. It wasn't good at all. And it's a freaking shame because it's such an important movie. They introduced an Infinity Stone, the Reality Stone, but it wasn't good. Let's keep going. After two bad movies, we get to one of the best. Captain America 2: The Winter Soldier. This movie was something really different. They changed the tone of the movie apart from the rest. The other movies, yes, were serious, but Marvel has such a formula that they were really comedic mixed along with seriousness. But this movie really set this apart from everyone else. They turned the Winter Soldier into a political piece, and it was just so gritty and mature, and I freaking loved it. Cap changed, his best friend Bucky came back as the Winter Soldier. A lot of things happened, but let me tell you, it's one of the best MCU's movies to date. If you have not seen it, please do yourself a favor, go ahead and watch it. And the bangers kept rolling in because we have gotten to the Guardians of the Galaxy, the ragtag group that the MCU needed. They weren't all heroes, no, they still aren't. But as a group, they worked really well. Peter Quill, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Groot. And this movie brought another important element, an Infinity Stone, the Power Stone. And now that we have the Power Stone and the Reality Stone introduced in Thor 2, we're slowly building up to the end. Still got a long way to go, but Guardians was a really great movie, and it just kept the ball rolling. Rolling all the way to Guardians 2. It picks up a couple months after the original. Peter is falling more and more for Gamora as he is forced to confront his past. His past meaning his dad Ego, who is literally a planet, and they introduced the Celestials, which is pretty cool and will be useful in the future. Great movie, not as good as the first, but still a lot better than Thor 2. After the second ragtag movie, we get a third one, Avengers Age of Ultron. Good movie, nowhere near as good as the first, but Tony and Bruce create Ultron, meant to be an extra layer of protection around the world. But that goes wrong, and he is a freaking crazy person, Ultron I mean, and he wants to cleanse the world. This movie introduced a couple cool things. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, both X-Men, but they changed their past. Hopefully now that Disney owns the X-Men, they could do something with Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Quicksilver's dead, but no one stays dead in the comic books. But this movie also introduced another Infinity Stone, the Mind Stone that was attached to Vision's head. Hey, and they also introduced Vision. This movie was more, I think, to continue the plot. It was good, but this movie did a lot that plays in big later. A lot has happened. MCU needed a bit of a fun break, which brings us to Ant-Man. One of my personal favorites, Paul Rudd is a thief who is going to steal from Hank Pym, and he ends up stealing the Ant-Man suit that Hank put there for him to steal. I know it's kind of confusing, but it was a great palate cleanser. Nothing too crazy happening, nothing world ending, just a fun movie. It introduced the quantum realm, which plays big in Endgame. It plays huge in Endgame, and possibly opened up the idea of the microverse. But aside from all that, this movie was pretty great, pretty good. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. It's really good. Watch all of these movies. We didn't get to one of my favorites, Avengers 2.5, Captain America Civil War, where they introduced my favorite superhero, Spider-Man, but they also introduced Black Panther. Where is my sweater? I am cold. That was my Wakanda impression. I know, it's like I freaking live there. This movie was great. There's nothing more to say. Cap and Tony are split between the Sokovia Accords, which are that the government can pretty much control supers. There's more to it. After Age of Ultron, the government was tired of supers leaving a mess while they saved everyone, and Cap and Tony disagree, and they have their own teams and they fight. There's a lot more to it, obviously, but it's a great movie. I freaking loved it. Please go watch it if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, come on, what are you doing? After the introduction of Spider-Man in Civil War, we get Spider-Man Homecoming. Not the usual Peter Parker story of him getting his powers, losing Uncle Ben. None of that, because we've seen that twice already. In this one, he already has his powers and is just trying to get through high school while fighting the Vulture. It pretty much sums it up. It's a pretty standalone, and it works so well that way. I loved it. I'm biased because he's my favorite superhero, but it's really good. It's really, really good. At the same time, we have Doctor Strange, another personal favorite of mine. Because I'm a magician, so I'm a little biased, but because I want, magic, and I want to know about the universe and everything. Dr. Stephen Strange, a surgeon who gets in a wild-ass car accident, he's pretty much not the same as he was before, and he's desperate for help. He wants to fix his hands. He finds Kamar-Taj and finds the Ancient One, who shows him everything. Magic, the multiverse, everything. He becomes a sorcerer and later on the Sorcerer Supreme, and is in charge of keeping our reality safe. Pretty standalone like Spider-Man, but pretty freaking great. I cannot wait for the second one, the Multiverse of Madness. Oh man, that's gonna be wild. Damn, to be honest, man, we have a lot of standalones here because now we have Black Panther. I might offend some of you, but this movie wasn't all that. Don't get me wrong, it was very good. I just don't think it deserved all the hype that it got. But we have T'Challa, the king of Wakanda, and he fights Michael B. Jordan for the crown. And to be honest, that's kind of it. It's a pretty solid movie. There's really not much to say after that. Now, one of my favorites, a fan favorite, Thor Ragnarok. I don't get it. Thor cuts off his hair, and now he's awesome. But that's this movie. Awesome. We have Thor and Hulk in a buddy cop movie. They get thrown into Sakaar, a trash planet, and they're just trying to leave and get back to Asgard because Thor's sister Hela, who was hella fine, was beautiful, has taken over Asgard and killed everyone. It's pretty freaking wild. Thor is completely reimagined by Taika Waititi, and it just works. Chris Hemsworth is such a good comedic actor, and Taika Waititi's vision for him was amazing, and this movie works so well that he got another contract to keep the movies going, so that's freaking awesome. Now, this is the last standalone movie before we get to the big leagues, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Let me get through this fast because there's really not much to the big story. Aside from the quantum realm, not really much of anything. Anyways, we have Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they're fighting a ghost lady. That's pretty much it. Yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff, but the reason that Scott wasn't in Infinity War because he was doing this, and at the same time when Thanos dusted everybody, Scott was in the quantum realm and he was stuck in there, and everyone he knew died, and he's been in there the whole time up until where Endgame starts and he comes out 5 years later. We have done it, ladies and gentlemen. We have gone to the big leagues. Infinity War, one of the best MCU movies to date. But Infinity War, in my opinion, was more of a complete film. The Avengers fight Thanos as he tries to acquire all 6 Infinity Stones, and spoiler, he does it. If that was a spoiler for you, like, honestly, shame on you, because you should have watched the movie already. But yeah, he wins, and everyone gets dusted, the Avengers lost, and that leads into the next movie, Endgame. The finale of all these movies. Technically, Spider-Man 2 is the finale of the phase, but Endgame was the finale of the story. Great finale. Especially for someone who's been invested for 10 years, this movie did not disappoint. It used a lot of what was set up in the past movies, Quantum Realm mostly, because they used that to get back in time and get the stones and create their own gauntlet to defeat Thanos. This movie has honestly the greatest superhero fight scene of all time. It still gives me chills when I see it. It's literally a comic book scene on screen. It's freaking beautiful. Cap lifts Thor's hammer, gets the girl. We have a new Captain America, everyone's back, world is safe, but we also lost Tony Stark. This was undeniably his story. Started out with him in 2008, and it was such a great finish for him. We paid great respect to Tony Stark. Finishing off with Spider-Man 2. Right after the events of Endgame, Peter is just trying to cope with the fact that Tony is gone, and that this movie tries to force the idea of a new Iron Man. Which I don't really understand, because he literally just died. Like, people are trying to make Tom Holland or Peter Parker the new Iron Man. Like, he just died. Like, come on, man. This movie is pretty great. Mysterio had some amazing moments. Jake Gyllenhaal was amazing. Some of the hologram scenes were wild. Zendaya and Tom got together and they introduced J. Jonah Jameson. And we finally found out who Spider-Man really is. Now, there wasn't really much to add. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. That's about it. But I really hope Tom Holland continues in the MCU, because he is such a pivotal part to what the MCU has done now. And the fact that this Sony stuff is going on, like, if he gets taken away, I'm just gonna be just so freaking sad. Because, like I said, he's my favorite. But, like, he's such an integral part of what we're doing now. And, like, what we're doing, like, I work there. But yeah, like, I don't know. But we did it. We did it, ladies and gentlemen. We recapped the movies. Took a long time. Honestly, took longer than 10 minutes. So that title is wrong. But now you're all caught up. And get ready for Disney Plus. Remember to like this video. It really helps out the channel. This video took a long time to make. And it's a labor of love. I love the MCU. I love films in general. So I didn't mind it at all. But also remember to subscribe. Follow me on Instagram. And I will catch you guys in the next